On the island of Crete, 1,000 years before the Parthenon, a unique culture blossomed in isolation. Untouched by the endless wars of the mainland, they built not fortresses, but magnificent palaces open to the sea. This was the dawn of the Minoans, the first advanced civilization on European soil, a people who would create a world of such complexity that its memory could only survive as a myth. At the heart of their world stood the Palace of Knossos, a vast, sprawling complex of countless rooms, vibrant frescoes, and bewildering corridors. It was not a royal fortress, but the administrative, religious, and economic center of a maritime empire. This was the original Labyrinth, a monument to bureaucracy and ritual that would inspire tales of a monstrous prison. Imagine walking through these halls. The walls are alive with color, depicting scenes of nature, athletic feats, and enigmatic religious rites. You'd see leaping dolphins, elegant ladies with elaborate hairstyles, and most famously, young men and women vaulting over the horns of a charging bull. This wasn't just decoration. It was a window into a society that valued beauty, athleticism, and a deep connection to the natural world. Their art shows a people full of life and joy, a stark contrast to the martial cultures that would follow. The Minoans were masters of the sea. Their influence, what historians call a thalassocracy, stretched across the Aegean. They were traders, not conquerors. From their ports, ships sailed laden with exquisite pottery, fine textiles, and precious olive oil, trading with Egypt and the Near East. They controlled the waves, and their wealth flowed back to Crete, funding the construction of even grander palaces at Paistos, Malea, and Zakros. For centuries, they lived in relative peace, their island a beacon of prosperity and high culture. But who were they really? We call them Minoans, a name given by the archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans, inspired by the mythical king Minos. We've decoded their later script, Linear B, which turned out to be an early form of Greek used by their conquerors. But their original language, written in the still undeciphered script of Linear A, remains a mystery. Their religion is just as enigmatic. We see priestesses, sacred horns, and the double-headed axe, or labries, but the true nature of their gods and goddesses eludes us. The central figure seems to be a powerful goddess, a Mother Earth figure, often flanked by lions or holding snakes, suggesting a society where women held significant religious and possibly political power. Then, around 1700 BCE, disaster struck. A cataclysmic volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, now known as Santorin, sent shockwaves across the Aegean. Tsunamis would have battered the northern coast of Crete, and volcanic ash would have blanketed their fields, crippling agriculture. The palaces were devastated, but incredibly, the Minoans rebuilt, reaching an even greater height of artistic and architectural achievement. They were a resilient people, determined to carry on. But this recovery was not to last. The weakened civilization became vulnerable. Around 1450 BCE, the palaces were destroyed again, this time by fire. Archaeological evidence points to invasion, most likely from the Mycenaeans of mainland Greece, the heroes of Homeric legend. The newcomers adopted and adapted Minoan culture, but the original spirit was lost. The vibrant, peaceful society of traders and artists gave way to a more militaristic order. Knossos was occupied, its administration taken over, but the soul of the Minoan world had faded. The memory of this incredible civilization receded into legend. The Labyrinth of Knossos became a mythical prison for the Minotaur, a terrifying half-man, half-bull creature. The powerful maritime empire was remembered only through the story of King Minos and his tribute of youths from Athens. For 3,000 years, the Minoans were lost to history, their palaces buried, their achievements forgotten. It wasn't until the early 20th century that Sir Arthur Evans began excavating at Knossos, uncovering the ruins and bringing this lost world back into the light. What he found was not a monster's lair, but the heart of a brilliant and sophisticated culture, a civilization that celebrated life, art, and the beauty of the world around them. The story of the Minoans is a powerful reminder that history is not just a tale of kings and wars. It is also a story of artists, traders, and innovators, whose legacy, once buried under layers of earth and myth, continues to inspire awe and wonder today. Ever wonder how an entire civilization thrived for centuries without building massive walls for defense? The answer lies not on land, but on the waves. The Minoans, with their fleet of swift, agile ships, became the undisputed masters of the eastern Mediterranean. This wasn't an empire built on brute force and conquest. It was a thalassocracy, a sea-based empire. Their power projection wasn't through towering fortifications, but through the prows of their ships cutting through the Aegean Sea. This unique naval dominance brought about an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity known as the Pax Minoica, the Minoan peace. Imagine a world where trade routes were the lifelines, not battle lines. For hundreds of years, the Minoans ensured stability, allowing art, culture, and commerce to flourish across the islands. They controlled the sea lanes, connecting civilizations from Egypt to the Levant, and in doing so, they built a legacy not of war, but of wealth and influence. Their cities, like the famous Palace at Knossos, were open and unfortified, a stunning testament to the confidence they had in their fleet. This wasn't arrogance, it was a calculated strategy. Why build walls when your navy is an impenetrable floating fortress? This period of peace allowed the Minoan culture to reach its zenith, creating some of the most beautiful and sophisticated art the ancient world had ever seen. Their mastery of the sea wasn't just about military might, it was the very foundation of their golden age. Now let's journey from the open seas into the heart of Minoan culture, into their palaces and shrines. Here, one powerful image appears again and again, a symbol that dominated their world: the bull. You'll find it in vibrant frescoes, intricately carved on tiny seal stones, and as the centerpiece of their most sacred spaces. To the Minoans, the bull was far more than just an animal. It was a divine symbol, an embodiment of raw strength, life-giving fertility, and the awe-inspiring, untamable forces of nature itself. This wasn't the monster of later myths, but a revered and sacred being. Their connection to the bull was so deep, so profound, that it formed the core of their most important rituals. One of the most famous, and perhaps misunderstood of these, was the spectacle of bull leaping. We see it depicted in stunning frescoes, graceful, athletic figures, both men and women, vaulting over the back of a charging bull. This wasn't a bullfight in the modern sense. It was likely a highly spiritual and ceremonial act, a daring dance between humanity and the divine power of nature. This deep reverence for the bull, this constant presence in their art and religion, would echo through the ages. It became the seed from which one of the most enduring legends of the ancient world would grow, the myth of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth. But before the myth, there was the reality, a sophisticated civilization that saw in the bull not a monster to be slain, but a powerful force to be honored, understood, and celebrated. It's a key to unlocking the very soul of the Minoan people. Have you ever heard of a ritual so dangerous it's literally a dance with death? That was a reality for the ancient Minoans. They didn't just pray to their gods from afar, they lived their faith in the most visceral way imaginable. Picture this, a massive, powerful bull charging at full speed. And what did the Minoans do? Young men and women, with breathtaking skill and courage, would run towards it, grab its horns and vault over its back in a stunning acrobatic feat. This wasn't a sport like you'd see today. It was a deeply sacred ceremony. This bull-leaping ritual was a profound metaphor. It symbolized the delicate balance between humanity and the untamable forces of nature, the divine. It was a test of bravery, a public display of control in the face of chaos. Each successful leap was a victory for order, a renewal of the harmony between their world and the cosmos. It was a performance of life, death, and rebirth, played out in a packed arena with the fate of the lepers hanging in the balance. It tells you so much about their worldview, that they saw themselves not as conquerors of nature, but as partners in its powerful cyclical dance. Now let's journey about 70 miles north of Crete, across the sparkling Aegean Sea, to an island we now call Santorin. Back then it was known as Thera, and it was home to a flourishing outpost of the Minoan world, the city of Akrotiri. Think of Akrotiri as a sister civilization, a miniature version of the grand palace of Knossos. This wasn't some backwater colony. It was a sophisticated, thriving city in its own right. Archaeologists have uncovered incredible multi-story buildings, complete with advanced plumbing and engineering that was centuries ahead of its time. Walking through the excavated streets of Akrotiri is like stepping into a time capsule. The city was frozen in its prime, preserved under layers of volcanic ash, much like Pompeii. The art they left behind is absolutely stunning. We're talking about vibrant, detailed frescoes that decorated the walls of their homes. These paintings show us scenes of daily life, religious processions, and beautiful landscapes filled with lilies and swallows. They reveal a people who deeply appreciated beauty and had a close connection to the natural world around them. Akrotiri was a crucial part of the Minoan trading network, a bright jewel in their Aegean crown. It was a testament to their influence and prosperity. But the very thing that preserved Akrotiri for us to marvel at today was also the source of its, and ultimately the entire Minoan civilization's, impending doom. The volcano on the island of Thera was a sleeping giant. The city's wealth, its beauty, its sophisticated society, it all existed on the edge of a cataclysm. The Minoans there lived in a paradise, unaware that they were also living on a time bomb. The story of Akrotiri is a poignant reminder of the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations. It was a vibrant, beautiful world, about to be erased by one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history. This event wouldn't just destroy Thera. Its shockwaves would ripple across the sea and bring the golden age of the Minoans to a violent, abrupt end. The Thera Eruption was an apocalypse, a blast so immense it would have been heard thousands of miles away. It triggered colossal tsunamis that would have slammed into the northern coast of Crete, wiping out coastal towns, fleets of ships, and vital agricultural lands. The sky would have darkened for days as a thick blanket of volcanic ash fell across the region, poisoning the soil and water. For the Minoans on Crete, it must have felt like the world was ending. Their gods had seemingly turned against them. This single catastrophic event crippled the Minoan civilization. Their powerful navy, the source of their control over the seas, was devastated. Their economy, dependent on trade and agriculture, was shattered. The psychological blow would have been immense. It created a power vacuum in the Aegean and weakened the Minoans to the point where they became vulnerable to invaders. This is when we see the rise of a new power from mainland Greece, the Mycenaeans. They were a more militaristic, warlike people, and they took advantage of the Minoans' weakness. They conquered Knossos, and the unique, peaceful Minoan culture began to fade, replaced by a new order. The labyrinthine palaces fell silent, the bull-leaping rituals ended, and one of history's most fascinating and enigmatic civilizations slowly slipped into myth, becoming the legend of Atlantis. And so, the story of the Minoans ends not with a slow decline, but with a sudden, fiery cataclysm. From their mysterious origins and magnificent palaces, to their death-defying rituals and their tragic end, they left behind a legacy that continues to captivate us. They show us a different way a civilization can be powerful, not through war, but through trade, art, and a unique relationship with the world around them. Their tale is a powerful reminder that even the greatest societies are subject to the unpredictable forces of nature. Imagine a world at its peak, a civilization of artists, sailors, and traders basking in the Mediterranean sun. This was the Bronze Age, and the Minoans on the island of Crete were its masters. Their palaces were marvels of engineering, their art vibrant with life. Their ships sailed to every known corner of the world. They were powerful, prosperous, and seemed utterly invincible. But they were living on borrowed time, unknowingly in the shadow of a ticking geological time bomb. The day was coming when their world would be erased, not by war or famine, but by the raw, untamable power of the earth itself. This is the story of the day the Minoan world ended. In the mid-2nd millennium BC, roughly 3,600 years ago, that time bomb exploded. Just 100 kilometers north of Crete, the island of Thera, what we now call Santorini, was home to a massive volcano. And on that fateful day, it erupted with a force that defies modern comparison. Think of Krakatoa, the legendary eruption of 1883. Now, multiply that power by at least 4. This wasn't just an eruption, it was a planetary event. The island of Thera literally tore itself apart. A column of superheated ash, rock, and gas shot miles into the sky, punching a hole through the atmosphere. The sound would have been deafening, heard hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away. A cloud of darkness spread across the Aegean, blotting out the sun for days, maybe weeks. For the people of the ancient world, it must have seemed like the gods themselves were at war, that the very sky was falling. This wasn't just the end of a day. It was the end of an era, a cataclysm seared into the memory of humanity. But the eruption itself was only the beginning. The volcano's most devastating weapon wasn't the ash or the fire, but the sea it displaced. As the heart of the volcano collapsed into the ocean, it created a series of colossal tsunamis. These weren't waves. They were moving mountains of water, walls hundreds of feet high, radiating outwards from the epicenter of the blast at the speed of a modern jetliner. And their primary target was the northern coast of Crete. The Minoans, a seafaring people, had built their entire civilization facing the ocean. Their bustling port towns, their magnificent fleets of ships, their fertile coastal plains that fed their population, all were directly in the path of this unstoppable force. The impact would have been apocalyptic. The waves slammed into the coastline with unimaginable power, sweeping miles inland. Entire towns were wiped from existence in an instant. The pride of the Minoan civilization, their powerful navy that had guaranteed their control of the seas, was annihilated. Their ships were either smashed to splinters in the harbors or dragged out to sea and swallowed by the churn. The agricultural heartland was poisoned by a thick layer of saltwater and volcanic debris, rendering it useless. In a single, horrific day, the naval, economic, and agricultural backbone of Minoan civilization was not just broken, but utterly shattered. The great palaces might have survived the initial shock, but their foundation, their entire support system, was gone. The aftermath was a world transformed. A civilization that had thrived for over 1,000 years was brought to its knees. The loss of their fleet left them vulnerable. The destruction of their farms led to widespread famine. The intricate trade networks they had built simply collapsed. The social and political order fell apart in the chaos. Into this power vacuum stepped the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece, who would eventually take control of Crete and its remaining people. The vibrant, unique culture of the Minoans faded, absorbed into the new order. The story of Thera is a chilling reminder that no matter how advanced or powerful a civilization becomes, it is always at the mercy of the planet we call home. Have you ever wondered what happens when a superpower collapses? Not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing whimper. Let's travel back in time, past the fall of Rome, past Alexander the Great, to the twilight of Europe's first great civilization, the Minoans. Imagine Crete, the jewel of the Aegean, not swallowed by a tidal wave from the Thera Eruption, but choked by something just as deadly. A thick, grey blanket of volcanic ash falls from the sky, day after day, week after week. It settles on the fertile fields, poisoning the soil. The sun is a pale disk in a hazy sky. Crops wither on the vine. The once predictable climate becomes erratic and harsh. For a civilization built on agriculture and trade, this was a death sentence. The lifeblood of the Minoan world was the sea. Their ships, laden with exquisite pottery, fine textiles, and precious metals, sailed to Egypt, the Levant, and across the Aegean. But now the trade routes are fracturing. Ports, once bustling with activity, fall silent. Distant partners, perhaps facing their own struggles from the climate chaos, no longer send their goods. The intricate web of commerce that sustained the palace economy unravels, thread by thread. And at the heart of it all lies Knossos. The great palace, once a vibrant labyrinth of color, art, and ceremony, becomes a shadow of its former self. Think of it like a modern metropolis after a global economic crash. The corridors, once echoing with the footsteps of priests, artisans, and officials, grow quiet. The grand storerooms, once overflowing with grain, wine, and olive oil, begin to empty. The people, the descendants of the great bull leapers and sea lords, now face a daily struggle for survival. Their world, once so stable and prosperous, has been broken by a distant fire. The Labyrinth, once a symbol of power and sophistication, is becoming a tomb. But chaos for one is often opportunity for another. Across the water, on the rugged mainland of Greece, a different kind of power has been growing. These are the Mycenaeans. You might know them from the tales of the Trojan War, of Agamemnon and Achilles. They are a harder people, a warrior culture obsessed with glory, honor, and bronze. For centuries, they had been the junior partners, maybe even vassals, of the sophisticated Minoans. They admired and copied Minoan art, architecture, and writing, but they were not Minoans. Theirs was a world of fortified citadels, not open palaces, of boar-tusk helmets and great thrusting spears, not elegant frescoes of dolphins and lilies. They watched from their hilltop fortresses as the Minoan giants stumbled. They saw the trade routes falter, the Cretan ships vanish from the horizon. They saw weakness. And they seized their chance. It probably wasn't a single, massive invasion, but a gradual encroachment. Mycenaean warriors and traders moved in, first taking over the fractured trade routes, then establishing footholds on Crete itself. They were organized, aggressive, and armed for war. Eventually, they came for the heart, Knossos. Imagine the scene. Tough, bearded warriors clad in bronze armor, marching through the gates of the once peaceful palace. They were not there to admire the art. They were there to rule. They occupied Knossos, adapting the palace for their own needs, turning it into the administrative center of a military occupation. The delicate balance of the Minoan sea empire was shattered forever. The age of the priest-king and the sea goddess was over. A new era had dawned, one forged in bronze and defined by the ambitions of the Greek warrior hero. The legends of Homer were about to be born, rising from the ashes of the Minoan world. This transition from Minoan to Mycenaean wasn't just a change of rulers, it was a fundamental shift in the culture of the Aegean. It's a powerful reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile, and that in the grand story of history, every ending is also a new beginning. In the smoldering ruins of the once great palaces, a discovery was made that would rewrite history. Thousands of clay tablets, baked hard by the very fires that destroyed the civilization that created them. They were covered in a strange, elegant script, a puzzle of lines and symbols that scholars would call Linear B. For decades, it remained a mystery, a silent testament to a lost world. The big question was, what language did it represent? Was it the unknown tongue of the Minoans, or something else entirely? The breakthrough came in the mid-20th century, a moment of pure genius that sent shockwaves through the worlds of archaeology and linguistics. A young architect, an amateur classicist named Michael Ventris, cracked the code. The answer was stunning, almost unbelievable. The language hidden within the Linear B script was not some unknown Minoan tongue. It was Greek, an archaic early form of Greek, but unmistakably Greek. This changed everything. The tablets weren't poetry or grand histories, they were administrative records. Lists of goods, personnel, livestock, tribute payments. It was the mundane paperwork of a palace bureaucracy, and it was written by the Mycenaeans. This proved that the Mycenaeans, the warlike culture from mainland Greece, had not just conquered Crete. They had taken over the Minoan palaces, adopted their sophisticated administrative system, and imposed their own language, effectively erasing the original Minoan tongue from the official record. The conquerors had become the new masters of the palace, using the tools of the conquered to rule. But as the Mycenaean civilization itself later collapsed and the centuries rolled by, literacy was lost. The palaces fell into ruin, and direct memory of the Minoans faded into the mists of time. Yet the story didn't die. It couldn't. The sheer scale and strangeness of what was left behind were too powerful to be forgotten. Instead, memory transformed into myth. The vast, impossibly complex palace at Knossos, with its labyrinthine corridors and countless rooms, became the labyrinth of legend, a maze from which no one could escape. The sacred bull, once a symbol of life, power, and ritual for the Minoans, twisted in the popular imagination. It became a monster, a terrifying creature lurking at the heart of the maze, the Minotaur. The historical reality of tribute of subject states sending goods and perhaps people to the powerful Minoan centers was retold as a much darker story. The sacrifice of Athenian youths and maidens sent to be devoured by this monstrous beast. And the fall of this mighty civilization, the historical event of conquest and collapse, was simplified and personified into the tale of a single hero's victory. A brave hero from Athens, Theseus, who navigates the Labyrinth, slays the Minotaur, and escapes, breaking the curse. The complex history of cultures clashing, of economic and political shifts, was distilled into a timeless story of good versus evil, hero versus monster. So the Minoans themselves were gone, their language silenced, their cities buried. But their legacy endured, encrypted in the myths of their successors. Their grand palaces and potent symbols were too magnificent to simply vanish. They echoed through the ages, not as historical fact, but as the foundational stories of Western civilization. The Minoans were lost to history for thousands of years, but their world was immortalized, forever preserved in the beautiful, terrifying, and unforgettable labyrinth of Greek myth. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the ancient world. See you next time.